Welcome back to ASD, A New Perspective, the podcast show where we help you understand what is going on with your child, and we do encourage you that growth for your child is possible. I'm Kat Lee, and in this week's podcast, Dr. Gutstein continues his two-part podcast series on gesture and communication for your child.
Gesture is also, for young children, one of the ways that they develop self-communication, interestingly enough. So you see a child a very young child who's not yet internally or self-communicating with words, and you can see them sort of moving their hand towards a place where they're going. And sort of as a lead to them helping themselves sort of to make sure they're getting where they want to go and holding on to that. That later becomes language-based, but it starts with self-gesturing. And so it's interesting as well. And it starts very, very early. I think it's an area that we don't pay enough attention to. And anything we can do to give our kids more support and, to sort of amplify their functioning without increasing the cognitive strain or the information processing strain, I think is a great thing. So, one of the things we do, of course, when we are forming experience representations, we're always doing enactments, right? We're not using narrative words, we're doing enactments. We can use language too, but we find if we just use words, the emotions out of them, they become too distant. The re-experiencing doesn't really occur very well. And even when we're recollecting or re-experiencing, we do partial enactments as well with our bodies. And what gesture is when young children do enactments, they use their whole body, right? They're moving and they're really, really playing out with their bodies what's happening, and they're moving around. Gesture becomes an abbreviation of that, if you think about it. It's an abbreviation of all that full body movement into sort of your hands, right? And it's what we have. That's, one of the reasons, it's not one of the only reasons we have hands, but it's one reason that we use our hands in communication so much, is that rather than moving our bodies, right, so much. So, you think about primitive tribes telling a story, and they might use their gesture and their hands, they will down to there, and then this happened, and this happened, and they're trying to communicate to someone else where they weren't writing yet, but they were using gesture, and they weren't necessarily moving. They didn't have to take the person to that place, but it became a way of symbolizing or representing a dynamic action, dynamic movement, much better, in fact, than words did, or along with words, supplementing words. In terms of communication, but also in terms of your own, as I say, your own experience and your own learning, it's really important to experiment with that. Think about that. Think about adding that, and don't get over focused on just languaging things. That's one of the problems we see, especially with high functioning kids with autism, is especially when we look at their recollections, their episodic memory, their autobiographical memory. It's dead. It doesn't have emotion attached to it. It doesn't have any feeling. They don't have any feeling attached to it. So the encoding, the recollecting was done in a sort of disembodied way. That sense of somebody being disembodied. And I think that we hear that a lot with our high-functioning kids, is they're disembodied. They act that way. And so movement, gesture, and body learning becomes a really critical element for sense of self, self-awareness, and reflection, for all kinds of learning, right? And for communication. So it sort of goes both ways.
I kind of have a comment and a question, I guess, combined in one, but
absolutely. Talk about it.
As I'm watching you communicate, I'm thinking about how if we just kind of, from a social skills, which you and I talked about, trying to teach somebody to interact in a way that was not natural to what they were saying, how much trouble that could cause them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, absolutely.
And I've seen that with the skill of, okay, now gesture now while you're talking, and okay, do this now. And of course, that's not how you and I do it. It's an outgrowth of whatever we're trying to express.
That's right.
Like you said, it's that connection. It's not okay, here's where you do this. Like you said, a politician might have to be taught to do it, but even they would have to feel the connection.
Oh yeah, you can't do it in a scripted way. Here's when you gesture this, here's when you gesture that. It just becomes a way of operating. It becomes an automatic habit of doing that. You can start out mindfully with it and just play with it a little bit. Like if you have a child, a teenager, whatever, and you can say, let's just play with these gestures, of stop. There's just the things that they may not even be aware of. Stop, no more, slow down, slow down, and then use it for yourself to slow down. Let's see, to use it as you're thinking out loud. Let's see, what am I thinking about? Let's see, am I doing that? Wait a minute, I need to stop for a second. For self-regulation, I need to stop. And again, to create bridges with someone else to show how big it is. Just to start beginning things like, wow, it was that big, and it took a long time. But I went really slow, and then I started to go faster and faster and faster, right? So you can start. Those are very authentic, very easy, right? Non-scripted ways of doing that sort of build in a natural sense of gesture. So that this one is a very good one, right? Of any kind of variation of this, of you and me, right? Hey, we can do that, or do you understand me? But I think that you can play with it. So wow, it got higher and higher and higher as we were going in the airplane, right? And we're going faster and faster. You can use different variations of it, faster, 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 faster. But you'll notice that people with autism don't often do that, or get really nervous, and I was really worried about it. What am I going to do? And so to start to recognize that you have this incredible modality that is very powerful in many ways for yourself, for others, and just play with it like that. And again, you're starting out very simply. How high was it? Well, it was high, and it got higher, and it got smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller, and it was really tiny, right? And some of the kids may already be doing that. Some people already be doing that, but it's something to be thinking about, observing, and then again play with it, make it authentic, make it a habit, what I call a sort of a mental habit, that it just starts to accompany both your communication, your recollection and encoding of memory, if you're working on that, and even your own, as I said, your own problem solving, right? Okay, now what do I have to do? I mean, it's funny because it's not like when they teach something like a particular gesture is more important than another gesture. Let's see, I'm stuck here. Let's see. Well, maybe there's a different way I can go, okay? And it's funny to just engaging your body in that way, we find is very powerful and it's very helpful. And as I said, it's not going to put more of a stress on that person unless you force them to say, okay, what gesture do I have to do right now? Or what does that person gesture mean? We absolutely don't want to be doing that. That's like the last thing, that's the worst thing, because then you're putting all this extra processing stress that is not going to help them whatsoever in the real world. But just the use of it and play with it, I think has enormous benefit to people.
And thanks for joining us for ASD, A New Perspective, the podcast show where we help you understand what is going on in the mind of your child. And we encourage you that growth for your child is possible. I'm Kat Lee. See you next time.